as far as this quarterback market goes, the Browns could do worse than Russell Wilson. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer Sherman, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and, of course, on the road. I know this isn't Russell Wilson from his glory days winning Super Bowl 48, but adding him isn't as bad as some are making it out to be. Maybe the Falcons are bluffing. If they are, the Browns still can't give in. And the Browns haven't made a lot of moves this offseason, but they've made some practical ones. I do want to thank you for being an everydayer with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you will find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well, and it's totally free to you. All you have to do, hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, and of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. So we got the news on, oh, my days are blurring together, Wednesday, that Russell Wilson, as the new league year begins, is taking visits at multiple places, trying to find a new landing spot for 2025. And one of those spot visits is with the Cleveland Browns. He will be in town today on Thursday, hanging out with the Browns brass, getting to know the team, seeing what he thinks. He's taking a visit with the Giants, obviously, after that. And who knows, maybe there's a path back to Pittsburgh for him as well at some point if the Aaron Rodgers route follows through, because it sounds like that's where they're headed. But what I found most interesting about this news, it wasn't so much the fact that the Browns were interested in Russell Wilson, because I've written about it. Thought he could be in play for them. Thought he could be a name they consider. And the way the market's kind of fallen, this is where you're at. Like these are the names left. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's Russell Wilson. It's Gardner Minshew. There's a few others out there. And so if you want to add another veteran to this room, this is what you got. This is what you're dealing with. So it's not surprising to me that there's some interest there in Russell Wilson. But what I was surprised by was the Browns fan reaction, I guess, to Russell Wilson. I was seeing so many people who were joking about being ready to jump off a bridge. They can't possibly bear to watch Russell Wilson quarterback this team next year. And I guess I'm confused as to why some Browns fans are acting as if this would be like the most painful experience of their Browns fandom ever. I mean, listen, you watched as a Browns fan 0-16. You watched 1-31 over 2 seasons. You watched Deshaun Watson just last year give you one of the worst offensive quarterbacking performances of all time, and leading one of the historically worst offenses ever in the history of the NFL. You lived through that. You're here. Like you survived. You saw Jameis Winston last year throw a bunch of interceptions and cost you a bunch of games. You saw DTR struggle as badly as he did. You saw Bailey Zappi start a game last year. You saw the year before that PJ Walker, an XFL player, start games for the Browns. And you're worried about Russell Wilson being the thing that sets this organization back, and the thing that's going to make your eyes bleed, and you can't bear to watch the offense, the offense under his command. I just don't know what people are expecting to find in the free agent quarterback market this year. If Russell Wilson is the thing that's the worst case scenario, and listen, this isn't me trying to advocate that Russell Wilson's going to be great. If you've been a listener of the show, you know that I've I did a fun exercise where I was going through and doing a quarterback big board, a list of quarterbacks that I think would be good fits for the Browns this offseason, the best case scenarios and all that. It started with Matt Stafford. It ended with Jalen Milroe as my 15th option on a list of quarterbacks that I would consider for the Browns. Russell Wilson came in at 13th on that list of 15. Wasn't great. Wasn't that high. He's a guy that you sort of know what to expect. And you know what you're getting into. And I think he showed last year in Pittsburgh, there is still something left in the tank for him. I'm not saying it's a lot. I'm not saying it's going to be great football. But it's satisfactory football. It's football that can win you some games, and it could be football that loses you a lot of games as well. And if that's the case, like, okay, the Browns are right back in this situation next year, probably with a new head coach and new GM, and they get a chance to take maybe their franchise quarterback if they pass on one this year, or get another really high draft pick and add to the roster. So like, but that is just kind of, I think in general, the reality of the situation that the Browns are in. And that's where I say, like, I don't know what people were expecting to find in this free agent quarterback class. Listen, I get you here, Matthew Stafford, and maybe your ears perk up and you're like, hey, that's the name for me. That's the name I want. And the Browns at least seem to inquire about him. But in the end, he stays in LA. He's not on the move, and nothing changes there. And so that did never come to fruition. But any of these names you throw out there, like none of them are perfect. No, like if you're expecting to find a savior at quarterback in this free agent class, like you were mistaken. You were misguided in your beliefs and what the Browns are going to get. Like all these options aren't great. All these options have flaws. All these options have things that deter them from being truly game-changing quarterbacks. But you're looking for somebody to sort of steady the ship here. You're looking for probably someone who can sort of bridge the gap between either a rookie you're drafting this year before he takes over, or a rookie that you're setting the stage for next year when you eventually draft that franchise quarterback. But that's kind of the goal. And I've been clear about what I think the Browns quarterback room should look like and what it will look like. A redemption product. They got that. Kenny Pickett. He's your redemption product. Guy who had a rough start to his career in Pittsburgh, didn't play very well, goes to Philly, gets quote unquote cleansed a little bit because he's now played behind a one of the best, a top 10 quarterback in the league, and won a Super Bowl as part of this team, and gets a shot at redemption now to sort of revive his career somewhere. And that ends up being Cleveland. He's not supposed to be the starter. He's viewed as a backup by the organization. I can tell you that. I did tell you that. And so, like they have that one checked off. The next one was going to be a veteran. And yes, I've been saying I think Kirk Cousins is the best option at that. I saw plenty of people in the comments, though, yesterday on yesterday's show saying Kirk Cousins stinks, he's washed, he's whatever. And again, I just don't know. Like, so what's the quarterback that fits what you're looking for? What's the quarterback in this free agent market that addresses all the things that you're hoping to find in a quarterback? I don't think it exists. Like, Kirk Cousins isn't a perfect answer as much as Russell Wilson isn't a perfect answer. I think Kirk Cousins is maybe the better of the two, maybe one of the better ones out there if you're trying to sort of, find a quarterback that can be suitable for you. I think he's the better choice. But like it's like we're splitting hairs on these things, and anybody who's acting like up in arms about Russell Wilson versus this guy versus that guy, it's like, guys, all these D-list quarterbacks at this point. Russell Wilson's an A-list name, but he's a D-list quarterback at this point. Like they're all kind of the same. Like they're all going to give you the same sort of ceiling and floor as the other ones. So you can throw out any name and be ready to say no, but if you don't know what you want, like. The third bucket in this equation is the Browns are going to draft a rookie at some point. Maybe it's at number 2, maybe it's in the second round, whatever. They're going to draft a rookie at some point, and that addresses the third bucket, and that's your sign of hope. That's your guy that you're hoping turns into a franchise quarterback for years to come. But again, like all these free agent guys are about the same. The goal here is that they hopefully find a guy in the draft, and then that's who they're paving the way for. You can live with Russell Wilson for, I don't know, half a season, maybe less, maybe more, to get you to that next guy who's going to sort of get the torch and carry on. But like, I didn't get the outrage over even just having a conversation, having them come into the building and have a conversation. I get it. It's not the best option, but none of these options in the free agent market are great. So like beggars can't be choosers. We can't be sitting here griping and whining about every single quarterback that's being rumored to the Browns when they're already scraping the bottom of the barrel to find said signal caller that can be a veteran in their room. It's just the reality of the situation that they're living in. Now, I will say this. If there's anybody that can be unhappy about Russell Wilson and the rumors, it's Jerry Jeudy, because he did not have good numbers with Russell Wilson when they were together. I will say this, though. The first year together was better. Now, that wasn't a Sean Payton team because he wasn't there yet. But their first year together, him and Jerry Jeudy did some good things together. And that was before last year. I mean, that was Jerry Jeudy's, best season of his career. up until this past season. He had the 972 yards with Russell Wilson the first time they were together. So maybe I'm reading into that too much, and I'm not giving Russell Wilson a fair assessment there. But I guess I could understand a little bit if Jerry Jeudy doesn't necessarily want to be reunited with the quarterback that didn't really seem to be on the same page with them that second season they were together. But hey, different team, different coach, all those things. Maybe it could work out, and him and Russell Wilson are going for almost 1,000 yards together, and he can have another 1,000-yard season like he did last year. We'll see. But I just, I'm not sitting here griping over Russell Wilson. I don't love it, but again, none of these options are names that I'm like, in terms of the veteran guys, the free agent market, are guys that I'm like gung ho about. There's flaws for all of them. So I think the Browns could do worse than Russell Wilson if that's where this thing ends up landing, and that's the person that they end up with as their veteran quarterback in this quarterback room. Now, with all that said, I talked yesterday about the idea that I think Kirk Cousins still ends up with the Cleveland Browns. It seems like the Falcons are digging in, and they're going to be willing to pay this $10 million roster bonus that kicks in for 2026 that they will owe him. If that's the case, and they're trying to get the Browns or bait the Browns into trading for him, they cannot do it. Stick to your guns, Andrew Berry. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track of your finances. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Take advantage of all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year using the app. All right, so I might be mistaken about the availability of Kirk Cousins. I felt strongly yesterday that the situation was going to play out with the Falcons eventually releasing him. They seem dug in, though, on the idea that they're going to keep him around as a very expensive backup to Michael Penix Jr. and maybe aren't going to actually, make it easy for some team just to sign him on a veteran minimum, and they want his value to be more so they can try to shop him in a trade. Now, I'm guessing they're making calls right now trying to trade Kirk Cousins, and I'm guessing that the Browns are probably involved in those conversations. And I want to make something very adamantly clear here out of the gate of this conversation. Under no circumstance can the Browns go out and trade for Kirk Cousins. I guess I shouldn't say no circumstance. If it's like, hey, we're going to eat 90% of his contract this year or 80% of his contract this year, whatever, and all you got to give us is a 7th round pick, maybe there's a way to make that work. But the finances of the deal, in terms of like the future, the Browns can't set themselves back anymore given what the current cap situation is. They got to start clearing money off the books. They can't add more. And the Cousins contract would be an albatross that gets sort of thrown into the mix here. I know you can always maneuver around it. And like I said, that's why I guess like if there was a way to get them to at least most of the money this year, and then maybe you can get out of a good chunk of the money next year and it wouldn't matter as much because, again, that's the base salaries aren't guaranteed, then yeah, maybe there's a way to make it work for a low-end pick. But in the grand scheme of things, like I'm not trading for Kirk Cousins and taking on any more money than I have to. You want Kirk Cousins on the vet minimum. That's what you want if you're a Browns fan. That's what the Browns want. They want him released. They want to be able to pay him very minimal amount of money to get him to come into their building. And so the Falcons realize that that's like, the simple path for him to end up in a place like Cleveland and just cut your losses, whatever, bite the bullet on the cap hit. But the nice thing for the Falcons is that, listen, they have a rookie quarterback. They're not paying a ton of money locked up in that position. They don't have a lot of money locked up in several other areas. So as they kind of are on the rise here, a team that's trying to get back into contention, they have some cap flexibility that other teams don't. So they're going to, it seems like, sort of sit on this here and wait for Kirk Cousins to become more valuable to some team, i.e., when there's an injury, maybe in training camp, and then somebody comes calling and says, like, you know what, now we'll give you a third or a fourth round pick for Kirk Cousins. Why the hell not? We need a quarterback. So on one hand, it's a smart philosophy and strategy from Terry Fontenot and company there in Atlanta. On the other hand, though, what I think is interesting about this is it does kind of create this awkward quarterback dynamic behind Michael Penix in the same way the Browns didn't want to bring back Joe Flacco last year because they were worried about the vibes around Deshaun Watson, and they didn't want to ruffle his feathers and know that there was this guy breathing on his neck that Cleveland fell in love with over the course of 5 weeks as he led them to the playoffs and all these different things. Like it's similar, right? Not quite the fan love thing because Kirk's only been there a year. I don't know that fans like love Kirk Cousins, especially after he fell off a cliff. But the idea that like you have this very expensive player that you sort of brought in to be your starter, sort of waiting in the wings behind Penix if something goes wrong, it adds some pressure on a rookie quarterback, or I guess not a rookie anymore, but a young quarterback who's trying to cement himself as a franchise guy and as a starter for this franchise and this team. Like to have that sort of breathing down your neck or waiting behind you, it can create an uncomfortable situation. So they're taking their chances with that. It's a bit of a touch and go sort of thing, and there's some risk involved there, but they're willing to see it through for now because they think they can get more value for Kirk Cousins later. Like I said, I get it. I get what they're doing here. Maybe you get to training camp, some team suffers a brutal quarterback injury, and they're like, fine, here's a third round pick so that we can get Kirk Cousins and have viable quarterback play, and you get what you want out of this. So I understand why that seems like the philosophy they're taking. If I'm the Browns, though, again, I can't pay that price, at least not now. Like maybe circumstances could change in August and you're like, all right, we got to do something. Like if you draft a rookie and God forbid he got hurt or something, okay, fine. Then maybe you got to go get a guy. If you don't like Russell Wilson, if you end up signing him, for example. Now, I don't think that's going to happen if they don't. If they sign Russell Wilson, I think they're riding out with Russell Wilson. That was just like a very dumb hypothetical. But regardless, like in no world, if I'm the Browns, am I – like you're calling Atlanta's bluff until they decide to move off this thing, whether that's the end of this week or whether that's, before the 10 million kicks in over the weekend for 2026 that they have to pay him. Or if it's in August, like you are calling their bluff until you can no longer call their bluff. You are not going to trade for him. You can't do it. Under no circumstances can you give in and trade for Kirk Cousins. Andrew Berry stuck to his guns when it came to the Myles Garrett situation. He got that resolved, got it back under contract, and he showed up, or he's going to show up and be part of the team this year. The same thing applies here. Like Berry needs to stick to his guns, play his best game of poker, give his poker face to Atlanta. Do not trade for Kirk Cousins. If you're not getting him on a released deal where you're going to pay him the vet minimum, it's not worth it. So this might mean that the Kirk Cousins thing doesn't actually come to fruition, that he ends up just staying in Atlanta. And if that's the case, Browns are going to have to live with that. They're going to have to look elsewhere. That probably alludes to or points to why they're having Russell Wilson in, because they know the market's getting sort of thin here. There's not a lot of options left. They got to have somebody as a veteran. They got to have somebody potentially as a viable starter if the rookie situation doesn't work out or whatever, if they're trying to give that guy some time to get adjusted to the league, whatever they're sort of planning here. We'll see how that plays out. But you cannot trade for Kirk Cousins under any circumstance. And, if that's the case and you got to look elsewhere, so be it. Now, I do think if it ends that way, because I talked yesterday about the idea that like Kirk wants to go to a team where he can start anyway. And so would that prohibit the Browns or deter the Browns from taking a rookie quarterback potentially at 2? I still said you got to, if that's your plan, you still got to roll with it, because you can't put all your stock in Kirk Cousins and you can't put all your stock in any of these guys. But I do think off that conversation, bringing in Russell Wilson or any of the veterans left, Gardner Minshew, whatever, all that to me would suggest that, yes, they're going to take a quarterback at 2. And, Kirk was the only one. I think there could have been a conversation there if he's really adamant that he's not going to come to a team that, that he can't start. I still said I would have balked at it. I would have said, fine, we're taking a rookie, so too bad. But regardless, like that is, I think somebody like Russell Wilson coming in, I think would give credence to the idea that Browns are probably going quarterback early in this draft, and they like these guys enough to pick one at number 2 overall. It's been a largely uneventful offseason for the Browns to this point. That's to be expected. They don't have a lot of money to spend, as I just mentioned. But what I will say is the moves they've made have been practical. I'll talk about that coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use every single buzzer beater or Cinderella story coming your way in the weeks ahead, and even those cutting down the nets. It's no secret. We all watch the tournament for the upsets. They are the lifeblood of college basketball this time of year, and especially with a team like UConn, the defending champs, not being quite as dominant as they were in recent years. So FanDuel makes it easy to back the underdogs with spreads, totals, and game props for any of those teams. In the end, though, you still do have to have a favorite in mind. I've got my eye on Maryland for what it's worth. Big key, senior guard play. I'll be putting some money on the Terrapins, most likely in the FanDuel app, which is also easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel.com. All right, so to be expected, the Browns have not made any big blockbuster moves, any major moves. They haven't made a ton of moves to this point. But like I said, that is to be expected. The cap situation for this team has sort of prohibited them from being able to do too much. And even though I thought they'd be linked to some different names, I mentioned Javon Hargrave. He got what did he get? I don't even remember off the top of my head, but he had a whole bunch of money guaranteed. It was a lot. I think it was like $20 million, $13 million guaranteed. He was out of the Browns' price range. So they were always going to get priced out for some of these top name free agents. And that's just par for the course for Cleveland. So nothing unexpected there. But what I will say in the small moves that they have made, and none of these are like, I guess the Kenny Pickett one was sort of eye-popping because nobody saw that coming. Nobody imagined Kenny Pickett would ever play for the Cleveland Browns, but here he is, and that trade is officially final as of the new league year at 4 p.m. yesterday. So Kenny Pickett is a Cleveland Brown, and very unexpectedly. But regardless, the moves they've made, though, have been practical. And, you talk about like wanting to hand out grades this time of year for the moves that teams are making, or maybe your team is making. And I think right now, from what they've done, again, they haven't made the big flashy signings and the names that everybody knows, but the moves they've made, I'd give them like a solid B plus, B to B plus, somewhere in that range, because the moves make sense. And they're sort of betting on players that aren't like the standouts to contribute in certain ways. There's some low risk, high reward potential to some of the moves that they've made. I mean, and we can kind of go down the list here, but like Cornelius Lucas, talked about him a little bit yesterday. We heard David Harrison of Locked On Commanders talk about what he brings to the table. And that's a guy who, very physical, swing tackle, can play both sides. Offensive line depth is so important in the NFL. And it's very important for this Browns team that has struggled with offensive line injuries the last couple of years. We don't know if DeJuan Jones can stay healthy. So somebody like Cornelius Lucas provides you some security at the tackle spot. So I thought that was a smart move. Like, for the price you got him for too, it makes a lot of sense. Devin Bush coming back on a 1-year deal. Again, filled in for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, handled the role pretty nicely, knows the system. Again, he wasn't first-round pick Devin Bush his first year in Pittsburgh, where it looked like he was going to be like an all-pro linebacker, but he was a solid player. He was good for the Browns. And, I think what he brings to the table at a position of need, and that's probably one of their weaker positions if you don't have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out there. And if JOK's maybe career's in jeopardy, having a guy like Devin Bush is helpful. So I thought that was another practical and smart move by the Browns. Speaking of the linebacker position, they added Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and from Tampa Bay, and he's more of an edge guy. He's an outside linebacker who played in a 3-4, so that's why he's listed as a linebacker. But you're adding value and depth to the defensive line. Like, it's the waves of defensive linemen that sort of come after a quarterback that Jim Schwartz likes to deploy. So there's some upside there to that position, to that player. And it's about sort of adding depth at a key spot on your defense and a key spot on any football team, your defensive front. And then there was also the news on Wednesday. It hasn't been finalized as of yet. I think they're still sort of ironing some things out. But Malik Collins from San Francisco, a 2-year, $20 million deal for him. And like, that's an opportunity for the Browns to, add a guy who last year was 7th in pass rush win rate in the NFL for defensive tackles. So you move on from Dalvin Tomlinson, who you're releasing as a post-June 1st cut. You get an instant replacement once they sort of finalize things with Malik Collins coming in to sort of man the middle of that defense and provide a spark and provide some pressure from the inside, which was something that was lacking from Dalvin Tomlinson last year and that they were valuing and that they needed. So like, all the moves they've made have made sense. No, of course, it's not like it's not like Laramie Tunsil getting traded to the Commanders and the Commander. Oh man, like, it's not going to catch your eye. Nobody's, gushing over the Browns moves. And I'm not even saying like we should all be like chanting that the Browns are going to the Super Bowl or anything here because of these moves, but they're smart. They're moves that make sense for a team that is, sort of trying to retool here and pivot a little bit. And again, I said this yesterday, but like, it feels like all these moves give an indication that Andrew Berry knows where his team is at. He knows that they're not maybe ready to compete for a Super Bowl immediately this year, but they're going to try to stay competitive. And they're going to sort of fill some spots that of need with role players that have shown you some nice things on tape that you can hopefully get the best out of in a couple years ahead, and kind of go from there. But everything they've done, I think, makes a lot of sense. They're all smart moves. They certainly help the depth of this team in a number of ways. And even if none of these guys are like frontline starters, although I think Malik Collins will probably be a frontline starter. But yeah, like, I feel good about it. It's not to go yell from the mountaintops that the Browns are going to win it all, but it is an opportunity to sort of feel like the Browns are doing what they can and being smart about the way they're handling their business as things stand right now, which is a win for Andrew Berry. Now, ultimately, Andrew Berry is going to be judged on what he does in the draft, these players, if he can land a quarterback or not. That's what's most important for Andrew Berry this offseason. But so far, I think it's been a resounding win for him this offseason between getting Myles Garrett to sign on the dotted line and kind of calling his bluff, the moves that they made in free agency so far. I guess if they don't end up with another quarterback other than Kenny Pickett after free agency, maybe we can revisit if it's been all wins for Andrew Berry. Oh, I didn't even mention Joe Bitonio coming back. That's a win for Andrew Berry. But for now, I feel pretty good about how Andrew Berry and this Browns staff have kind of handled retooling the roster at this juncture in the offseason. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thanks for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come this week on Friday, including, I don't know, will we have a decision from Russell Wilson? Will he be a Cleveland Brown? Will something happen with Kirk Cousins? Will there be some other dark horse quarterback that we're not talking about who sneaks in? You'll have to find out. So you'll have to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already to make sure Locked On Browns is your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everydayer with the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.